Are you trying to dominate your fantasy football league? Do you want so many championship rings it's impossible to sign autographs? Well, crack open a beer, pour yourself a glass of bourbon, and settle in, because you've come to the right place. Welcome to Hammercast.
Welcome to the Double D's podcast, which is part of the Hammercast Network. I am your host, Kevin Coleman, and on this episode of the podcast, we have special guest Jacob Dunne, and who's pretty much does it all. He's been on our schedule for about 4 months. It's hard to book this guy. He's all over the place. He's an analyst for Primetime Sports, New Life Fantasy, Fantasy Six Pack. He's a top 5 ranker for Fantasy Pros. He's someone that I've known for a long time now. It feels like it's about a year. And so I appreciate you coming on, Jacob. Talk about your Broncos. Why don't you tell the listeners kind of? I feel like you do every fantasy sport out there. So what are you doing right now? What fantasy sport are you focusing on? What content you got right now?
Hey, Kevin, thanks for that, man. And I just want to say, man, it's a pleasure finally to be on your show, because I feel like we've been fantasy friends for over a year now. You know, I've admired all your hard work from afar, and so I'm just stoked to finally be on your show. But you can find me on Twitter at Ain't Done Yet, and Dunne is spelled D-U-N-N-E. Lately, I've just been behind the scenes, kind of trying to perfect my early 2021 fantasy football draft rankings. I already have like a way too early draft rankings that I put out at the conclusion of the 2020 season. But as hot free agents sign, or like teams tag at like the Bears just tagged Allen Robinson.
Yes.
And the Lions aren't tagging Kenny Galladay. So there's a lot of stuff in the air. So I'm just waiting for the free agent domino to fall and for the draft to happen before I quote unquote perfect my rankings as far as give like an update. But once other than that, I've just been plugging away at fantasy basketball like you, Kevin, like sending out tweets every day on who you should stream or add. So if you're into that, guys, give me a follow at Ain't Done Yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, you should. And I mean, that's a whole different beast as I've gotten into it this year. Fantasy basketball is a different beast. Right now with content, we're all waiting for this free agency, and we have some great things there. So the reason why we brought Jacob on is because he is pretty much the guy I want to talk to you about the Broncos. The Denver Broncos. I'm actually kind of a closet Bronco fan, as Jacob has kind of found out. I actually like the Broncos. I actually do. I enjoy their franchise, probably because I was young enough to watch Elway win those titles, and so I still remember watching them growing up. So I do like the Broncos, and we're going to talk about kind of their dynasty outlook and just kind of where we at. But first, I want to kind of go over how did you feel about – I don't want to bring up bad news, but how did you feel about the 2020 season? So what did you feel like, they obviously 5-11, didn't necessarily finish the grade in the AFC West, had some injuries, but overall, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a season to forget. Like Von Miller's injury alone was a killer to our whole defense, just because he is our leader, he is our anchor. But then Sutton tore his ACL, and then Jarrell Casey, who we just acquired, tore his bicep. Albert Okwuegbunam tore his ACL, who is Drew Lock's best friend, and you saw that connection. Yeah. But he went out. Drew Lock was also in and out of the lineup dealing with his own injuries, and I feel like he himself was playing hurt most of the season. And then, Phillip Lindsay, my boy, he battled toe injuries all year. And so he kind of, he kind of screwed himself because it was his contract year. I feel like he was trying to gut it out and play so that he can earn that big contract, but he kind of screwed himself over, for lack of a better term, just because he didn't have a great year. And so now everyone's saying he's not built to be an every down back, which I don't think he is either. But, he is definitely a lot better than what we saw last year.
Yeah, you guys got decimated. Sutton was probably the one that hurt me the most as a fantasy guy. I had Sutton everywhere, and then he gets hurt, and it really hurt. I probably have like 8 shares of him. That just shows how many leagues I'm in. I'm in too many. But I love Sutton. Locke, like you said, was injured. I love Phillip. Lindsay was a guy that I thought I was high. I'm a zero running back guy, Jacob. So Lindsay was my guy. It killed me. And so I think the injuries had something to do with it. and just kind of where they went. And they're playing. They got to play the Chiefs, in that schedule. They're playing the Chiefs and the Raiders a little bit better. They always, Chargers. That's an interesting matchup every time they play. So I think they definitely underachieved. I thought they would be a little bit better. Do you feel like they underachieved?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I had them at 10-6 at the beginning of the season. And I know that was extremely optimistic of me, but I'm also a realist when it comes to my team. I am never like a rose-colored glasses guy. I'm a realist. And the Broncos had so much potential, especially what we saw from Drew Lock in 2019 when he took over for, he took over for Brandon Allen, who Brandon Allen took over for Joe Flacco. Not the greatest set of quarterbacks, but, he didn't have, he could easily outperform those guys. And we saw that instant connection with Cortland Sutton, which gave all of us Sutton fantasy owners a sigh of relief. Like the very first game that Locke and Sutton had in week 13 in 2009, Sutton catches 2 touchdowns for 74 yards. It's like instant connection.
Yeah.
Locke didn't have that going into the season. I mean, like he did like a sketchy offseason, and we can go through that later, but it's just like he was counting on Sutton, a 6'4" target, to be his go-to guy, and Sutton went down with ACL injury, total killer.
Yeah, you can't – Sutton's loss, you can't minimize that. I think sometimes because he got hurt so early in the year and just before, obviously, season. And so, like, we sometimes forget how good Sutton is, I think. Right. And Locke didn't play that bad. And, he in that 2019 year, I mean, they were 4-1 when he was there. He had 100 completions, 156, 64% completion percentage, 7-3 touchdown to interception rate. So I actually like Locke. That I like Locke. I'm still. It hurts me to say that, but I still think that they could bring him back, and we'll get into that. What do you think about like? I don't know if people really know this outside of Denver. I do, because there was a great story about their ownership drama. They got a lot of ownership drama, front office kind of drama. They brought in George Patton. John Elway's not really the GM. First of all, what did you think of John Elway's job as a GM? How did you feel about his tenure as the GM?
So I was very happy to hear that John Elway stepped down from his position. And that's weird to say as a Broncos fan, but I believe he was in way over his head. I think that he got truly lucky when he convinced Peyton Manning to sign, which convinced a lot of elite defenders to sign with him, like a DeMarcus Ware and Aqib Talib and TJ Ward. They all came with Peyton Manning because they're like, oh, I'm going to play with this guy. So Elway got really lucky when D. Mendy, thank you, brother. Elway got really lucky with that signing. But ever since then, he's just been riding the coattails of that signing, and he's just been failing. Like, he can't draft offensive players. He whiffed on Paxton Lynch. He whiffed on, naming Trevor Siemian as his starter. He's just, and he drafted Locke, and there's optimism for Locke. But I was happy to hear that he stepped down. I really like the hiring of George Paton. I think that he brings like a no-nonsense vibe to this culture, and he brings like an unbiased take on this team. He's going to do whatever he thinks is best, instead of us Bronco fans who love the Elway glory days. It's like, oh, whatever Elway does is just gospel. But no. George Payton's coming in with a clean slate. He's going, we were kind of hoping that he would bring in Deshaun Watson somehow, but it's just like, the Texans want the world for him, and I don't think we should completely decimate our team for him. So, yeah, I mean, I like the signing. I like that Elway stepped down. So I'm really excited to see what kind of splashy moves that George Paton does.
Yeah, I think John Elway couldn't draft. He really struggled with his locating talent. And I'm glad you brought up the whole mindset of like, man, remember Paxton Lynch? That brings back memories. Cowboys almost traded up to get Paxton Lynch. Thank God that didn't happen.
Exactly. Like the Broncos traded up to get him.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys really wanted him at pick. I think they had like in the upper 20s or 30s. They had. And they really wanted Paxton Lynch. And that was the same year that they drafted Dak Prescott in the 3rd round. So I think they made a brilliant choice there. Or they just got lucky that John Elway jumped ahead of ahead of them to get Paxton Lynch.
Yeah, we were just lucky that Elway's done. They wanted him more. And I think you guys outdid us because Paxton Lynch was a complete failure. And then Trevor Siemian, Joe Flacco's corpse. I never thought that was going to be a good signing.
Elway trying to bring back the glory of signing Manning, being like, oh, well, Flacco won a Super Bowl. He has the leadership. Let's bring him over. Let's trade a third-round pick and take on his contract. And it did not work out at all.
No, and it just hasn't been good. I'm interested to see what you think of their head coach. Fangio is someone who I think has a big respect out there in the community, especially in the coaching world. And even Pat Shurmur, who I have thought when you look at the Broncos finished 28th the worst in the league last season in scoring, offense, passing yards, first downs. Is that more of do you think it's a coaching thing or is it more of a personnel thing?
I think it's both, but personally, I'm not a huge fan of Vic Fangio as our head coach. Now, I think he is a elite defensive coordinator, and I think that's where he belongs. He spent his whole career as a defensive coordinator, and now he gets a head coaching position in his 60s. Like, that's kind of head-scratching, but you would think that he has more awareness when it comes to clock management, but my goodness, he made some rookie mistakes out there when it came to time management and cost us a few games. So I would love to see him go back to the defensive coordinator position. I don't know. So George Payton hiring our new GM, I feel like I have this gut feeling that he's giving Fangio one more year, and he kind of has a guy that he wants to come in next year. I don't know who that guy is, but I feel like he's giving him one more year, almost as like a courtesy, just because George Payton, our GM, can't do much right now, besides try to make a huge splashy trade. But I think that George Payton is going to draft this team the way that he wants to draft this team and not the way that Vic Fangio wants to draft this team, and then bring in a coach that has the same philosophy as him next year. So I think that Fangio is out next year.
Yeah, I've never quite understand why teams don't just get rid of the coach when they bring in a new GM, because it doesn't seem to ever work. They're all saying the right things. I looked it up the last few days, and they have a great relationship, but that's all smoke and mirrors. You don't know what that relationship really is like.
Totally.
I think Fangio. He's better than Vance Joseph, maybe, right? I don't know. They both were pretty. Clock management. When I watch Denver games, sometimes I'm like, what are they doing? Right? What is happening right now? I feel like guys that play Madden know clock management a little better than what Fangio is doing out there.
Right. It's funny because I feel like the Fangio move was a lateral move because Vance Joseph was a defensive guru as well, and so they hire another defensive guru. Elway, even though he can't draft offensive players, he can draft defensive players. He's drafted some good defensive players. So I think he's taken that and being like, well, if we can get a defensive coach as our head coach and then get like an offensive guru as our OC, then perhaps we can make this work. But both those coaches, Vance Joseph and Vic Fangio, are one and the same. I don't see any difference. The Spider-Man gif, they're like pointing at each other. Yeah, that's it. That is perfect.
That's the thing with Elway. It's just he doubles down on his mistakes and triples down instead of like, hey, maybe we should go with an offensive kind of guru or at least somebody there. I never really quite understood the move. Shurmur is someone who I think is just frustrating to watch too. His play calling is really it's so just unoriginal. It's just, hey, Melvin Gordon, here we go, first down. Here comes a dive. And then, it just looked, and that could have been personnel though, like we talked about. I think we're going to get into the draft needs, but the Broncos hold a pretty big key to this draft because you guys could go a lot of different ways and you could just change the dynamics of the draft depending on who is there. Unfortunately, you draft right in front of my Cowboys, and I know you need a cornerback, and I really want a cornerback. And so I'm really worried about where that's going to go. But so you guys have the 9th pick. So the biggest team needs listed, running back, maybe offensive line, defensive line, maybe a linebacker, quarterback, corner. I think it's either corner or quarterback probably, or you can maybe go offensive line. What are you thinking with those picks? What are you hearing over there in Denver?
So, like you said, Kevin, we desperately need a cornerback. Yeah. We have no true number 1 because we just let AJ Bouye go. We have no true number 2. What we have is a 3rd round second-year sophomore Michael Ojemudia, who proved to be solid in the running game. Like, he's a really good tackler and made some plays in the passing game, but he's not a number one or number two. He is a third option. He could grow into the number two, but I don't like. We need a cornerback. We need to invest in Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, or even Caleb Farley out of Virginia. So you as a Cowboys fan, Kevin, I'm sure that one of those two are going to be available, because nobody in front of us, no one in front of the Broncos or Cowboys really needs a cornerback. And these two cornerbacks aren't elite. They're not on like the Jalen Ramsey level, like coming out of college, but they have the number one potential, I think that Patrick Surtain is going to be better than AJ Bouye next year. And I think that's what the Broncos think as well. Even in his rookie season, he's going to be as good as Bouye and can grow from there. So cornerback is what the Broncos need. Now, if I had my druthers, I want to go with the inside linebacker. We have been awful at the inside linebacker position. We do have Josie Jewell, who is a great run stopper, but we don't have a linebacker that can cover our tight ends and, like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller. I was going to say Hunter Henry, but the Chargers decided not to tag him. So who knows with that? But I want the Broncos to either draft a cornerback or linebacker Micah Parsons out of Penn State. That dude is explosive. He's fast. He can pass rush. He can pass cover, and he can run stop. That would be an elite linebacker to have on our team.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think you're going to go corner. The only team, like if we're listening to the team, the only team that scares me about the corner thing is the Lions, because I don't think they know how to draft, and I think that they actually feel like maybe a cornerstone corner is how they'll start their kind of rebuild. So that's the only thing that worries me there. But I think Farley or Surtain can be cornerback ones, and I actually like Farley's upside a little bit more. Mm-hmm. I think Surtain is basically as good as we think he's going to be, but I think Farley kind of has that higher ceiling as a corner. And trust me, I'm not a defensive guy, but I read a lot, so don't take my scouting ability there. But
I'll take it.
I will say now, let's say, for some reason one of the quarterbacks fall, Trey Lance or maybe Fields, right? We've been hearing all this stuff about Fields. If those two guys are sitting there, are you at all enticed to take one of those guys?
Okay, so I am not the biggest Fields fan. Okay. But as far as where the Broncos want to go, I don't think that they should spend their draft pick on a quarterback, unless his name is Trevor Lawrence. All these guys are kind of wild cards. I mean, there's a bunch of upside. There's a bunch of potential. Trey Lance is the biggest wild card to me for obvious reasons, because he came from a D2. But, Wentz, he was successful in his first year. He transitioned well. But I don't think the Broncos should take a quarterback, because I am on the Lock wagon. Like, I am just like, give Drew Lock a full off season with no COVID interruptions. Even if there's small COVID interruptions, at least it seems like things will get better, and like there will be more practices. There will be more chances for him to gain that chemistry back with Sutton, with Judy, with Patrick, with Fant, with Okwuegbunam. I think that if you give Locke a full off season, he's only had a handful of games that he has started. Like, yes, he stunk last year. He had some good games. He showed flashes. Yeah. But he stunk for the most part. And Bronco fans are really quick to give him the hook. But I want to give him at least one more full off season, hopefully a preseason, and then we can assess from there and see if he can grow, because now it'll be his third year in the league. And the third year is really where, each position, they start to take off. So I want to see them stick with Locke and give him that vote of confidence, and maybe draft a quarterback later, maybe like an upside play in the third round. But I am not looking quarterback in the first round personally.
Yeah, and I think if they don't take a quarterback in the first round, then they're going to stick with Locke. We'll talk about kind of maybe some free agents they might be able to bring in and have them compete. But no, I agree. I think that maybe they go a different route. I don't think they may necessarily want to give up on Locke. I think we give up on quarterbacks too easy too. I think they deserve 3 years, right? In my opinion.
Yeah. So Locke isn't going to be Tom Brady right out of the gate. He's not going, I'm not comparing him to Tom Brady, but I'm just saying, like, he's not going to be a world beater out of the gate, especially he came in late in his rookie season. He had a handful of games last year, no off season. Like, let's give him a full off season. Let's see what he can do, and then we can assess. So, yeah, I definitely agree with that. We give up on quarterbacks too easy when they really don't hit their groove until the third, fourth, or even fifth year. Like, I know that Rich Gannon didn't hit his groove until like his 8th or 9th year. So, we can't give him that much time. But just to put it into perspective, there's just some guys who are slow learners, but they will learn.
Hey, I love the Rich Gannon call out. Look at this. See, we're aging ourselves a little bit, but I loved watching Rich Gannon play back in the day.
Yeah.
I missed Rich Gannon. But no, I agree. I think that's part of it. Do you think that there's any shot they go running back in this draft, like maybe later rounds? I saw Javonte Williams from North Carolina get mocked there. It was one of their comp picks. I think it was the 3rd pick. Okay. Do you think they address something like that, or are we thinking about free agents, which we'll talk about later?
I'm 100% on board for us taking a running back in this draft, but not in the first 2 rounds. We need to address the cornerback and linebacker position. But I would love to take a flyer on a running back, because usually the best running backs are taken in the 3rd to 5th round.
Yeah.
Like vis-a-vis Alvin Kamara. That's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But there are some gems to be had in the later rounds, especially with running back. You can find a gem at running back. You can't find. I mean, it's really rare to find gems on the defensive side late in drafts. Like, it is rare. It happens, but it's rare. So I would love a Javonte Williams. I would love. Correct me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but like a Chuba Hubbard.
Chuba Hubbard, yeah.
Yeah. I watched him play on a random Saturday during the season, and he got like 3 touchdowns. He looked good. He looked like his vision was like on point. Like, I was like, I would love that guy. I would love that guy for him to be paired with a Phillip Lindsay. That would be a nice little duo there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call. Chuba is an interesting prospect because he was going to probably be a 2nd round pick last year. Right. Now he's kind of fallen off the wayside. But in your guys' run scheme and what you do, I actually wouldn't hate that call. I actually like Hubbard in that spot. And I agree there. But I do agree with your point. So I actually did some defensive rankings. I don't know what I'm doing in my life, but I broke down the linebackers because I was looking up for the Cowboys. Okay. And after the first 3 rounds, there are no linebackers that are worth kind of the capital that you're going to spend on them after that. It is very bare. And so is defensive end. Yeah. Even 1 tackles are kind of it equals. So I agree with you that if you're going to get a linebacker, you got to get in the first 2 rounds.
Totally agree, man.
So
Michael Parsons, please.
I know. Hey, I hope so. I hope you take him instead of my corner. So what we're going to talk about now is, and we're going to go through this quarter. We already talked about Locke, but we're going to talk about some other stuff here with Locke. We're going to go through the each position group. And I love the wide receiver tight end position group on the Broncos. The other 2 position groups are definitely kind of in flux a little bit. We think that they're going to stick with Locke. Kind of already mentioned that. I do want to think there are some free agents that everybody kind of always throws out. You guys have, I believe I looked earlier, it's like $32 million maybe. It depends on what the cap ends up being. So you're going to have some cap room. Yeah. Somewhere around there. Would you be opposed of maybe trying to get like Fitz or Jameis in there?
So my gut feeling is that we're not going to get them. Okay. I personally want more for Ryan Fitzpatrick than the Broncos. I think that I want to see him on a playoff contending team. I want that for him because I like him. I like his character. I like the way that he handles himself. He handled himself perfectly with the Tua situation last year. And he's just a lot of fun to watch. Now, I would welcome him here. I would welcome him. I would because I think he can win. I think he can win with the offensive talent that's here in Denver. Mm-hmm. He has receivers to be a steady top 15 guy, at least in fantasy. He could be really good. As far as Jameis Winston goes, I feel like the wide receivers here, Judy and Sutton, I think they would welcome that move because Winston just loves to put himself in a hole. I'm down 21. Let's start hucking the ball. Let's start throwing the ball. So he's great for fantasy. But as far as winning, he's not coming to Denver and winning. He is making games entertaining and interesting, which is not what Denver has had in the past 6 years since Peyton left. Games have been atrocious. They've been boring. The only exciting games are actually when Locke's in the game. Like, there was an exciting game when he faced the Chargers. He was down by like 2 touchdowns or so. Do you remember that game? And he came back with a vengeance and won that game. So that really sold me that Locke has that potential to come back. So I don't think we pick up a quarterback free agent. My gut says that George Payton, our GM, he rolls with Locke one more year. I think he sees it the way that we do because he hasn't made a quarterback move yet. I think that he gives him one more year, and then if he doesn't perform, then we go back to the draft or something like that.
Okay, no, I think that's fair. There's a lot of other weird guys out there. I've seen Trubisky, but you'd probably throw up in your mouth if you had Trubisky. There's other guys out there. There's one guy that I wish would get traded there, and that's Sam Darnold. And Darnold's my guy, and I think he would fit perfectly on that offense.
Kevin, I enjoy that article. You have a very convincing article on Sam Darnold where I'm like, you know what, he's right. I mean, like, he hasn't gotten a fair shake in New York. They have mishandled his situation. Like, they have screwed him up. Hopefully it's not mental and he's screwed up forever. He shouldn't be because I saw him play live when he came down to CU Boulder. USC faced the Trojans and he decimated us. He looked good, man. He was on his second and third read, and then he made that third read pass. I mean, he's on it. He's smart. I would personally love him here too. It's just I don't know if the Broncos love him as much as we do, Kevin. But I'm not giving up on Darnold either. He is a great prospect. He's going into his third year. He has tons of room to grow.
Yeah, and I think it's just based on you guys don't want to give up the draft capital. And so when you look at your picks, I don't know what you'd be willing to kind of give up. But that's kind of my pipe dream for Darnold. I need him to get the hell out of the New York Jets organization and get a new area. So as far as fantasy goes, if we're looking at dynasty values, how risky would how big of a risk would you take in trying to trade for a Locke? So, for example, like in a super flex league, he went for a first-round pick, and it looks like the 110. That's pretty risky for me to try, especially right now before everything that happened. This happened on the 12th of January. He also went for a second-round pick. Where are you kind of at with his value?
Yeah, so a second-round pick, like a middle to late set. I mean, he's still a starting quarterback, and that's very valuable in Superflex leagues. So I understand that first-round pick. I understand it. I wouldn't do it because that is a risk, like you said, because who knows if Locke is even the starter this year. And then next year, it's even a lesser chance if he doesn't perform. Like he could be just a career backup quarterback in an RPO offense. You never know. But I like the risk there with a middle second round pick. I think that's fair, or like a late second and a late third. I think that's worthy. There's so much questions with Locke. I personally wouldn't trade for him unless it's just like a smoking deal for me and it's a low risk deal for me. I'm staying away and I'm just doing a wait and see.
Yeah, he's a hold for me. I mean, if you can maybe get a 201, 202 for him, I have Locke in a few leagues, but I'm such a truther, I can't get rid of him for that. If I'll get rid of him for a first. But, when you look at he's my 23rd ranked QB in Dynasty, which isn't great, but to me, that's a lower end second round pick is probably his value.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's fair.
So when we're looking at quarterbacks, I think that they stay with Locke. I could see them bringing in some type of veteran to maybe push him a little bit, but who that veteran's going to be, we'll see. Now the running back position, again, when we're looking at Melvin Gordon, what are your feelings on Melvin? Because he had not a bad year. It wasn't terrible.
No, he didn't have a terrible year but in terms of the contract that he got from Elway. He didn't perform the way that his salary dictated that he was supposed to perform. I mean, he was supposed to be our bell cow guy. He was supposed to almost be like our 2-down guy, and then Phillip Lindsay would come in on third downs, and then they would switch off. Maybe like Gordon would play like 3 series in a row, and then Lindsay would play a series, something like that. Like they paid him to be our bell cow. he severely underperformed in the beginning of the season. He had fumbling issues. He made some good plays because that's what he does. He's a talented guy. But I personally, I wouldn't mind if they let him go and we save some of that money to sign like a cornerback, like a veteran cornerback. I don't think that Gordon's the answer. I mean, he's 28, 29 years old. I mean, I would much rather see him go, Lindsey get healthy, and then we draft a marquee running back in the 3rd, 4th round, like a Javonte Williams, like a Chuba Hubbard. And we not rebuild, I guess, but in the middle of a rebuild and contending, where you have Lindsey. He's a great leader. He's a hard worker, and he can teach that rookie running back, and we can go from there. But yeah, I'd be a fan of Gordon leaving, truth be told.
I'm sure. I mean, when you look at his contract, essentially it was about $16 million, 2 years. Last season, he had 986 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, and he's always had fumbling issues. That's been one of his biggest knocks since he's in here. Right. They could release him with a dead cap of 6.5, which isn't terrible. Sure. I mean, if you just look at Zeke's contract. So, dead cap 6.5 is not bad. Do you think they bring Lindsey back? Because there's been some weird social media stuff going on with Lindsey. I'm sure you've heard of it and seen it. Like, do you think Lindsey's coming back?
Yeah, so I do think he's coming back because, as I said earlier, I mean, he underperformed this year because he was playing on an injured toe the whole year. He didn't look right. He didn't look like what he looked like in his Pro Bowl season in his rookie year. And then his second year, he had just as good of a season. He didn't look right. And I know he's a lot better than that. He's a lot more talented than that. So if he has this full offseason to get healthy and to get right, then I believe that Lindsey can be. I mean, I would push for him to be our bell cow, but I know that his body is not big enough to hold that. So if we can get a running back in to rotate with him, and honestly, if Melvin Gordon stays, that wouldn't be the end of the world because Gordon is a reliable third down back. He's a reliable pass protector, and that's where Lindsey struggles is in pass protection. He's just not that big, like he has great technique, but you can't really teach size. I mean, he can't grow and he can't outmuscle those defenders. Gordon has muscle. He can do that. But I do think that they bring back Lindsey. I think they bring him back on a cheap, friendly contract because he's from here. This is his home state. He went to high school just down the street from me in Denver, in Littleton. So, I mean, he is a hometown boy. I feel like he will take a hometown discount, and I think he will come cheap just because of that underperforming year he had last year.
Yeah, no, I think it could be cheaper. I know they talked about, and I read something with Gordon, maybe to leave him. What do you, before we go on Gordon, would you give up a second for Gordon?
A 2nd round pick? I would, yeah. Yeah, just because, he by all intents and purposes, he has the starting role next year for the Denver Broncos. I'm sure there are rumblings and stuff like that, but as far as we know right now, he has a starting role. And it's like if you can grab a starting running back who plays on 60, 70, 75% of the snaps, I mean, that is well worth an RB2 to flex play for a contending team. So, yeah, I would.
Okay, he also got traded for Jarvis Landry straight up. That's an interesting deal, I think. I don't hate it, though, to be honest.
I would ask, is this a PPR league?
PPR.
Actually, that's a brilliant move because as you saw, the Mayfield and Landry have a brilliant connection, and Landry came on last year, and he still has at least 3 years of being a wide receiver 2 in PPR leagues. So that's a pretty fair trade given the running back scarcity and, Landry is a PPR monster. So, yeah.
It all depends on kind of your roster, how it looks. Like, we're all looking at these trades, and this is all on DLF, so you can see it. You guys definitely look at it. But I like it. So here are some potential free agent targets that I've seen mentioned with the Broncos, and you could just give me like I like that, or no, you're an idiot. So Mike Davis, what do you think of Mike?
No, I mean, I think he plays well in the role that's behind Christian McCaffrey. I think he thrived in that role. He came on when C-Mac got hurt, and he just plays a brilliant backup running back. If he came here to Denver, he would be probably the guy if Gordon's not here. But I don't want Mike Davis here. I would rather I would rather build up a rookie than bring in a veteran like him.
That's fair. I mean, the other one I saw was McKinnon from the Niners, but I don't know what that was at. And then Jamal Williams, who I actually like.
I was going to say, I really like Jamal Williams. Every time he touches the field, I wonder, is that Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams? I mean, like, they both look equally athletic and equally, like, Jamal Williams hits the hole so hard, and I appreciate that about him. And Phillip Lindsay does the same, but Jamal Williams has like 50 pounds over Lindsay. So taking my bias out of it, I would rather have Jamal Williams than Phillip Lindsay. But Phillip Lindsay's my boy, and I ride or die with him.
Hey, that's all right. That's why we play fantasy. You got to just kind of, you got these guys that you ride or die with. I mean, and Jamal is a sneaky good buy for some people out there before landing spot. Like, he got traded straight up for Darrell Henderson recently, like 2 days ago. I would do that deal all day. If I can give up Darrell Henderson, and especially in PPR, give me Jamal Williams.
Just because, like, what if Aaron Jones leaves? I don't think they're going to completely switch it over to A.J. Dillon. I think that's like the assumed notion, just because he killed it in that one game at the end of last year where Aaron Jones missed it, right? Like, he killed it. But the Packers love Jamal Williams, and they love feeding him the ball. I still think it's going to be a 50-50 split. And if Dillon goes down, Williams, we saw in that small sample size of being the guy, he killed it as well. He was a bona fide RB2. So Jamal Williams is a great depth piece, and he could even be used in your flex if he stays in Green Bay.
Yeah, no, and I think I would actually kind of like him. If Lindsey did leave, he would kind of replace that, and he can maybe be that 3-down back. So that would be an interesting, sneaky little play there. All right, let's go to my favorite position in the wide receivers with you guys. I love your wide receivers. I just hate that they can't get the production from their quarterback, and it is frustrating. Sutton, he's a forgotten man. So do you think Sutton can bounce back and be a wide receiver one?
So I think wide receiver one is pushing it, but I love Sutton next year. I think that Sutton has proven in his short career that he can thrive no matter who's throwing him the ball. He thrived with, like I said earlier, Simeon, Brandon Allen, Flacco, and Locke. And when Locke was a rookie and not ready, he thrived with him. He scored 2 touchdowns and got 74 yards. So I do think that Sutton is quarterback proof. And I don't say that about many wide receivers, but I think that he can produce with anyone. He's 6'4", he has an incredible reach, and he just has a nose for the ball. So I think that with a full offseason, Courtland Sutton can reach wide receiver 2 territory. I think he can be a high-end wide receiver 2. I don't see wide receiver 1 like a top 12, but I can definitely see somewhere between 13 and like 24. I can see that range. And if reports from camp say that his knee looks incredible, he hasn't missed a beat, I'm going to be extremely tempted to put him up in like the 15 to 20 range right there as far as redraft goes next year.
No, that's fair. I mean, in 2019, he finished as wide receiver 18. So that's kind of where he was at. And with those quarterbacks, and when you look at his numbers, I mean, he had 72 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Right.
So realistically, when we think of Sutton, I think that he is a big buy right now. I'm going to give you some deals for Sutton really quick. So Sutton went for Tyler Boyd and Jalen Reagor.
Really? Well, actually, that's a good deal for both sides because, like, Reagor, he has so much potential, but he didn't have a great year. And then Tyler Boyd's just a very consistent guy. Like, he's a very low-end consistent option. But Sutton has so much upside. I think it's a very fair trade in terms of both upside and potential. I think I would rather have the Sutton side based on true potential and what we've seen, and he's still very young. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's 24 years old.
Courtland Sutton should be 20. 25. He's 25 right now.
25. I mean, that's prime time right there. So, I mean, you are buying a guy in his prime who has Randy Moss-like speed, Randy Moss-like height, and he runs in a straight line, but he is an underrated route runner. So I like that trade for the guy who got Sutton.
Yeah, and then there's some interesting deals with him. He went straight up for Josh Jacobs. I don't hate it. Running backs are kind of king, but
right.
I probably would have wanted something a little bit more back if I was going to get giving up Jacobs.
Kevin. I like the trade for whoever got Josh Jacobs because it's like RB1s are few and far between, and those guys getting the workhorse role, you're going to want those guys. So I would prefer Josh Jacobs.
I got to give you one more just because I love the deal. So it's Sutton and the 306 for Deontay Johnson.
Wow. Okay.
You actually had to give up a pick just to get Deontay Johnson, and you get to add Sutton to your roster. And I love that deal for Sutton.
So I like that deal as well, especially since I think Big Ben's coming back for one more year. So Deontay Johnson has one more year of being a low-end wide receiver 1 to 2. But then after that, what's going to happen? And I don't think that Deontay Johnson is quarterback proof. I think he's playing well with Big Ben. They have a nice connection. But Sutton has proven to be quarterback proof. And what if the Broncos, what if our new GM, what if they go out and get a splashy quarterback next year? And these are the things that I think about in Dynasty whenever I pull off a trade. It's like, I'm not thinking about next year. I'm not even thinking about 2 years. I'm thinking about 3 years. Like, where could they be? So I do like that deal for Sutton and a third-round pick. That's solid.
And I love Deontay. He's my wide receiver 12 right now. That's how much I like him in my Dynasty rankings. But Sutton, and you're getting a pick, I love that. So, that's kind of value you can't pass up. Next guy is, your first-round pick from last year, Jerry Judy, who I think gets really shit on for no reason. I don't understand the hate for Jerry because I think he dealt with poor quarterback play, a poor offensive system. I actually think he's one of my biggest buys right now because of how low his stock is. What do we expect from Judy next year?
So I wholeheartedly believe in Jerry Judy. He gives me Antonio Brown vibes with the way that he runs his routes. His drops definitely need to clean up, but that should come with experience. He was a rookie. The problem with Judy is that he did battle with drops in Alabama. So this isn't a new thing for him. And he already had a brand coming into the NFL. So he's kind of, so he's kind of cocky. Like he knows he's good. He already has a brand. And so he's very much like him against the world. And he kind of carries that attitude, with him, which is a very alpha attitude to have. I respect it. But it makes me question his relationship with his teammates. If he can be a team guy or does he need the football? Like he gives me like OBJ vibes when it comes to like, are you going to sacrifice for the good of the team or do you need the ball in order to be happy? Those are the things that scare me about Judy. But when he's on the field, that dude is so quick. He runs his routes so precisely. And once he has the ball, he's so good at juking and like moving laterally is just like taking a step forward for him. Like it's like step, lateral steps. Like it is so easy to him. Like, and I agree with you, Kevin. He is definitely a buy low. I would give like a middle to late first round pick for him because I think, he had so much hype last year. You would have easily done that trade last year. And now he gets a full offseason to gel with Locke. And he is a supreme talent. And I would definitely look to buy low if you can get him for a second rounder or like a second rounder paired with, a middling wideout, like a top 30 wideout, top 40 wideout. I would do that deal in a heartbeat because Jerry Judy is going to be special.
Yeah, I agree. And I think and I don't care what anybody says, he's one of the best route runners in that class. I watch these guys and I know he's open a lot, but he does have that. Jerry Judy has that alpha kind of Chad Johnson, Terrell Owens wide receiver. And that's not always a bad thing. But you got to learn how to channel it. You got to channel it the right way. Now he went straight up for Kenny Galladay recently.
Whoa. I like that trade because Galladay's, I think he's around 28 years old. Yeah. So I think that's more of like a rebuilding trade, which I like. And whoever got Galladay is a free man right now. If he goes to Green Bay, he is a wide receiver 1. He's a top 8 wideout. So, sky's the limit for Kenny Galladay right now. So if you made that trade, I actually like it for both sides. But in terms of your future, I like the Jerry Judy side a lot.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. It works out for both sides. I wouldn't trade Kenny G until you figure out where he's going to go, and then maximize on that value. But I get it. Are there any other wide receivers, Patrick, Hamler, that you like, or that you think they're going to bring back, or what do you think about the rest of those guys?
So I do like Patrick. He showed this year to be an amazing depth guy. When Sutton went down, Patrick emerged as like the wide receiver 1, and Judy was the wide receiver 2. You know, like on most days, it was Patrick outshining Judy. So I think that Tim Patrick, he should produce deep league numbers for at least next year. I don't know where he'll be after that. Because we have so many mouths to feed. In this offense, but at least next year, I do think that Patrick's going to be a reliable safety net for Locke, because we already saw that connection. So I think he's somewhere in the wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 3 range. And then we move on to KJ Hamler. I am very pessimistic on him. I think he's purely a best ball draft pick. If you own him in Dynasty, I mean, you hold, because his value is as low as ever. He battled hamstring issues, which he battled before the draft. This isn't a new thing. Those speedsters are going to battle hamstring issues their whole career. I think there will be 1 or 2 games where he gets a 75-yard bomb and he wins you a best ball week, but other than that, you just don't know when he's going to do it, and I just can't trust him.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Hamler. I'm not a Hamler guy. There's all these guys that jump on Hamler, and I don't have Hamler anywhere. I never really saw it, and I actually didn't like the spot for him, because there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of – on that team, there's a depth at the wide receiver and the tight end possession, especially when they go 12 personnel. Hamler's not somebody that I like to own in fantasy. I like Patrick. I have him. He actually won me a couple matches when Judy went out, and I helped me, and I was like, I feel like I shit on Patrick. I'm sorry. I made some tweet, and I said, I had to start Patrick over, and then he went off for 2 touchdowns. But I like that core, and I think if they can get there, if that's why I believe in Locke, because I think he has talent around him. So they can make him look better. And if Sutton is there, I think it expands him. But I think that's a good call for Patrick. He finished as wide receiver 40 in PPR formats. So that's a third, fourth-ish kind of wide receiver, a good filler. All right, let's go to tight end and our guy Noah Fant. I would love to know where your dynasty rankings are for tight ends with him. Is he a top 5, which I believe he is? But where do you have him?
So I actually have Fant right outside my top 5. But, I mean, I think sky's the limit for him, and I think he's baby Gronk Jr. Like he is baby Gronk. I mean, he looks like him. He wears the same number, but like when he catches, like he's massive, man, and he's so fast. He runs like a gazelle. He runs a 4.4 speed at 6'5". I mean, you want this guy. And Locke was like, he threw him the ball a ton last year, but Fant was battling injuries all season too. So he was playing through ankle issues. So I think now's the time to buy Fant, because I have him and Hawkinson, like him and TJ Hawkinson, like right next to each other. It's like Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, Hawkinson, Fant. So I guess he is in my top 5, because Henry was in there, but it's like he's getting a little older, and I'm not sure where he's going to be next season. So
I'm not high on Andrews either. I'm not a big Andrews guy.
I'm not either, man. Yeah, I can't trust, like he'll either give you a goose egg or he'll give you like 2 touchdowns and 100 something yards. Like it's insane.
Yeah. No, I like that call. I like Fant call. He's got to stay healthy, but to your point, the guy, even though he missed a game, he kind of dealt with injuries in the Carolina game. He had 93 targets last year. So 93 targets. He still finished. He finished as tight end 12, but again, the tight end position after the top 2 are just devastating. Right. But that's why I also think he can get in that top 5, and especially with his targets. He had 90, like I said, 93. I think he's a top 5 asset. I like Hawkinson a bit more, but it's interchangeable to me, you know. And when you're looking at Fant, what you're giving up, you know, would you trade like Fant for Waller maybe? Or like you probably have to give up a pick if you want to get Fant. So like maybe Waller in a second for Fant for dynasty purposes?
Dang. So I own Fant in a 14 team super flex dynasty league. And I mean, I guess this is like, I really want to win because I got second place last year. Like, I want to win next year. I would be down to trade Fant for Waller because I think I'm that close. And I think it definitely is team dependent. Like you said earlier, are you close? Do you have Fant and you need that tight end, even though Waller's 28, 29 years old? It's like he still looks like he's 24, 25 years old. He could probably play until he's 33, 34 and be good. So I would actually trade Fant for Waller straight up, honestly, if you think that you can compete and win.
Yeah, I think what's happening right now with these lower level tight ends is that people who have Travis Kelce, who are kind of borderline rebuilding, they're actually trading Kelce for like these guys like Fant, Hawkinson, Kittle, but not so much Kittle because Kittle's now price is pretty close. So like a deal that just happened was Kelce for Fant and Juju.
Okay, so I'm going with the Kelce Juju side, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just because Kelce is a known commodity, a tight end one, and will beast for the next 2 years at least.
No, my bad. It was Kelce for Fant and Juju. So you get Fant and Juju. So I would actually.
Yes. So I know where you're leaning, and I would lean there too then. So Fant and Juju are younger. They have so much more potential, and I think if Juju, if he goes to the right team, even if he stays or if he goes to the right team, which I'm sure he will sign with the right team, with the right quarterback situation, I would much rather have the potential of Fant and Juju over just 1 to 2 more years of Kelce.
Yeah, and for those of you listening, I think with Kelce is the time you might want to think about. I love Kelce, but this might be the era where you try to pair it with something a little bit more. And if you believe in Fant or Hawkinson and these guys and bring them back, I think that's a great kind of deal for you out there. What do we think of Albert O? Because I loved Albert O until he went to the Broncos, and that landing spot hurt my soul because he was my tight end one in a bad tight end class. Sure. Do you think he'll ever be fantasy relevant enough? If Fant stays healthy, that he'll be fantasy relevant in that offense?
So I see him being more of a PPR play because he does have that he does have that chemistry with Locke. Yeah. Okuwebunam getting like a few games where he got 4 to 6 catches for like 40 yards. Like it's not going to be a ton of yards, but in a PPR league, in a very barren tight end talented fantasy world, I mean Albert O can start for you in a PPR league. I do think that he gets integrated slowly back into the offense just because of the ACL tear, and he's very young. But Drew Lock loves him. Elway loves him, even though that doesn't matter much because Elway's not there anymore. But they still have this behemoth of a man, Albert O, who also runs a 4.4. He runs just as fast as Fant. He's an extremely buy low, but he's also a risk. But it's like if you're trading away a 4th round pick for him, why not? Just do it. Yeah.
No, I loved Albert, man. I love him so much. It's so hard because he was my tight end one, and then he went there, and I'm like, well, then he's going to get stuck in that. I think they maybe go a little bit more 12 personnel. I get it. I think he's worth a stash, whatever you can get. I know the tight end class is a little bit better this year, but and again, Fant has had some injury issues, so it's not like if he can get in that high production, we could see Alberto actually stepping up and getting in there. So he's a guy that I like. So to kind of wrap everything up here, the things I want to kind of go over with you is, what is your prediction for next season? So what you give me, like, I know you're an optimist-ish, right? That's why I love you, Jacob. You're an optimist. You're nice. I love the relationship we've built. So I want to know, where does my optimist prediction for next year?
Ooh, optimistic prediction is probably 8-8. And that's just, we have such an inexperienced team. And I almost learned my lesson from last year that, just because we have a bunch of talent, just because we have Sutton, Judy, Fant at the start of the season doesn't mean it's going to translate. And it doesn't mean that the chemistry is there. And our defense got ravaged with injuries. Yeah. Now, if we all come back healthy and we get a full offseason, now there's a lot of ifs, there's a lot of ifs that kind of weigh me down because who knows what's going to happen. Even in an optimistic view, I think 8-8 is a very optimistic record for this team. Just because I think that we are going to be in a rebuilding mode. If we do start Locke, it's just going to be like, give him the keys. And like you said, Kevin, I do think that we bring in a veteran quarterback like Andy Dalton or something to at least push him.
Yeah.
I know it's a very, very gross, but it's like a realistic, it's like a realistic signing where like Dalton's like, I could potentially start there, you know?
Yeah.
And
Nate's about as high as I'd probably go.
Yeah. So, I originally had them at 6 and 10, but like I want to be optimistic. I want to believe we have a full off season and everyone comes back healthy and we are just ready to rock. And Sutton at least gives us 4 to 5 more points every game. Like his presence alone will take attention off Judy, will take attention off Fant, and he's going to win those 2-on-1 battles. I don't think that Sutton gets those 2-on-1 battles because of Judy, because of Fant, and because they have to respect Patrick too as our wide receiver 3 and sometimes our 2 when he spells out Judy. So, if everything breaks right, and Locke has Pat Shurmur as his offensive coordinator, which I'm not a huge fan of Shurmur's offense just because he's trying to fit Drew Lock into like a Peyton Manning mold when Drew Lock loves to be outside the pocket. He loves the RPO. He loves to play action fake. But he at least needs consistency. And Drew Lock has only had the same offensive coordinator for 2 years in a row, one time in his career. And that was one time in Missouri, and not coincidentally, that was his best year statistically of his whole college and NFL career, was that one time he had the same coordinator. So if Shurmur stays, then that's another reason why I think Locke at least becomes a competent quarterback 2, low-end quarterback 2 next season.
No, and I think that's a good point you brought up about Sutton. Sutton was able to produce wide receiver 2 numbers without Judy. And then now with Judy there, we could see that emergence of maybe Sutton being able to get freed up here, having that opening. So I think that's a good point to those of you listening when we talk about Sutton. All right, now I want to know this because I always ask my guests this, and it's always interesting to see. Who is your favorite Bronco ever? It could be past, present, anything. Who is your guy? Because I love Sterling Sharp. I love those guys, or Shannon Sharp, and Sterling Sharp. But who is your guy?
So really quick, my favorite present Bronco, you guys could probably guess it, is Phillip Lindsay, just because we went to the same college at the same time. I watched him play while we were both students. He's my boy. I really hope that we re-sign him. But my favorite Bronco of all time is the Sheriff, Peyton Manning. When he signed with Denver, there was such an incredible joy over the whole state of Colorado. I mean, he brought hope and optimism the moment he got off that plane. When he touched down in Denver, the moment he got off the plane, it was all over ESPN. He landed, like he waves, like there's a whole crowd there to cheer him on. Like there was just optimism, and he brought over elite players. Like this was an exciting time to be a Bronco fan when Peyton was here. And that was at the same time where I moved from California over here to Colorado. So I was just in awe. And like Peyton Manning really spoiled us with how exciting Sundays could be, because over these past 6 years they have been dreadful. But when Peyton was here, and Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas, and even Noshawn Moreno, along with Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, like those were fun times. So I will always love and respect Peyton Manning for what he brought over to this state. At the same time, when I moved over here, like there's like an emotional connection, and I've always been a Peyton Manning fan. So for him to be a part of my team was such a joy for me.
I mean, I love that he got my guy DeMarcus Ware a Super Bowl ring because DeMarcus is my guy from the Cowboys. I love him. I love DeMarcus. One of my favorite players ever. But you guys have had a rich history. Champ Bailey, Shannon Sharp, Terrell Davis, all those guys. You guys have a roster. So I love that story because I love Peyton, we won't talk about you being a Dodgers fan. Hey, make sure you follow Jacob. Obviously he's one of the best out there. Why don't you tell us one last time, what is next? What can we expect? What's your next fire content, something coming out that they can find you on? You're going to follow him at Ain't Done Yet, but I would love to hear something we can look forward to.
Yeah, so I am just in the middle. I'm grinding on these early 2021 draft rankings, and I'm also working on my dynasty rankings, just like you, Kevin. It's those dynasty rankings are something that I want to do after free agency and after the NFL draft because I want to just go all in. I want to immerse myself into all these rankings and just create it and just kill it. So I'll definitely be messaging you and stuff and saying where do you have this guy? Just so that, because you're the master, man. You are the Devy King. You are the dynasty guy, man. I respect you. And I really appreciated being on your show. So look out for my 2021 redraft rankings and for my 2021 dynasty rankings. I would love for you guys to look out for that. If you guys follow me at Ain't Done Yet, and Dunne is spelled Dunne, follow me so we can go down this road together, guys, and win you a championship.
Yeah, and follow Jacob. He does his rankings. He kicks that butt there, and follow them. As far as us, our next show, we will be doing draft strategies for your Superflex and Dynasty League. So we'll look out for that. We're going to go over ADP of players that we'd rather have, and then also after that, we have a top 10 Devy wide receivers. So me and my guy Todd Foster, we're going to be breaking down our top 10 guys for Dynasty you should be looking for the next couple of years. So we appreciate you listening. If you're listening on the pod, thank you. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, get us there, and we thank you guys. So I appreciate everything, and we will see you guys, and thank you, Jacob.
Did you get all that? If not, make sure you head over to hammercast.com, subscribe, and join the Hammer Nation. Until next time, keep grinding.